Good morning again, everybody. It's another Monday Motivation Podcast with Keegan Jewell. I'm your host, Keegan Jewell, and I would just like to say thank you for checking us out. Here, we're all about coming together one Monday at a time to reach our full potential. So what that means, one Monday at a time, each Monday, come out with a new episode. So whether you're watching on YouTube or you are listening on Apple, Google, Spotify, whichever of these platforms you're on, tuning in, make sure you hit that subscribe button, that follow button, whatever it is, and you'll get notified each and every Monday when a new episode comes out and reaching our full potential. I'm a firm believer that Mondays can be tough. Mondays can be really the worst, and to be honest, Mondays can suck if we let them. That's the key, if we let them. I'm a firm believer that we all have a calling and a purpose for our lives. And so this podcast is all about helping us reach that calling, that potential, live that calling potential if we're already there, or maybe step closer into that. And so really it's conversations, it's topics that are hopefully helping you and encouraging you in that walk, that journey of life. And that's what we're all about here on the Monday Motivation Podcast with Keegan Jewell. So that being said, just want to get into it. So let's hop into this week's episode of the Monday Motivation Podcast with Keegan Jewell, where we are coming together one Monday at a time to reach our full potential. Hello, everybody, again. It is the Monday Motivation Podcast with Keegan Jewell. This week, I'm going to start us off with something that I've actually looked into quite a bit recently, just, with this whole COVID pandemic and everything going on. And really, things start to open. As many of you know, I work at a church, right? And so as we reopen, we're trying to figure out best way, how to engage people online still and all that. And along the way, I came along this paradox, actually, that is called the Stockdale paradox. Maybe some of you know about it or heard of it before. I had never heard of it before. And so I was like, you know what, let's look into it a little bit more. Because, in the context of it, this guy was talking about his church is open. He's like, you cannot get caught in the Stockdale paradox. I was like, all right, let's look into this a little bit more. And so as I looked into it, found out that essentially, for those of you that don't know, it's named after, and I've got it up here on the side just so I can make sure I'm retelling it right, but it's based off of, James Stockdale. He was a vice president candidate who served during the Vietnam War and was held captive and was a POW for 7 years, right? 7 years. And it said during this horrific period, Stockdale was repeatedly tortured and had no reason to believe he'd make it out alive. It says he had to stay alive by embracing both harshness of a situation and balance of healthy optimism. And the whole Stockdale paradox comes into play when, he said, as he was asked about it later on, he said, what got you through it? And he said, we learned very quickly that we can't stay and we can't sit in this time of, we're going to be out by Christmas, right? Let's say it's, it's around December. It's like, we couldn't get caught up in this time of we'll be free from here by Christmas. Because, Christmas would come and go and we'd still be POWs. And it would just, your morale would drop, and if you kept doing that, you would lose really your will to live. But he said, you must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. And so, just using that, first of all, it was interesting to me to look into it and see it. But at the same time, it gets me thinking, like, how does that apply? Not even to me, obviously, because for me, it's caught up in, it's easy to say, as we reopen, I can't say everything will be good and back to normal by, August, right? And then August comes and goes and nothing. Okay, well, by September, it'll be good. Like, if you keep doing that, you're going to keep really just getting yourself caught in a funk. And what it comes down to is, even for all of us in this time, I think that One, we need to embrace what's going on right now, as we've talked a lot about before. Embrace what's going on, but even outside of a time of COVID, um, I think that if you're someone that's starting something up and has a passion to start something up, first of all, you just got to go for it. I think small version of the Stockdale paradox, all of us get caught in is, oh, I'm going to wait till X time to do it. Or I'm going to wait till I have X, Y, Z all figured out. Obviously there's some things that as you go to start a business, you go to start a podcast, like these things you have to have in place. Business, you need to have an idea, you need to have a business plan, you need to have funds for it to get it started. But really, in the end, like when you've got the main essentials, how many times do we stop ourselves by saying, oh, I'm going to start once I have this thing that may not be as needed or relevant, right? Or I'll start it up when I know I've got this much of a following. I know I'll start it up when this is done in life or this happens in life. That's tough. That's really tough. There's obviously some things that obviously happen. For instance, for me, like an example of my own life, there's many times that even off the cuff of, even this is a weird, strange example, especially when I'm comparing it to starting a business, all these things. But sometimes things are obviously going to take priorities in life. Like for me right now, whenever I look and I talk to people, talk to my parents about, getting these things, like getting certain things or upgrading things. It's like, I'm going to keep some things cheap as possible because I have student loans to pay off, right? Sometimes we got to make sacrifices, but at the same time, if we're, like I said, the version of the Stockdale paradox when it comes to living out our calling and our purpose is sometimes we get so caught up in like, oh, I'm going to wait until that, I'm going to wait until this other job comes open, or oh, I'm going to wait until this thing happens at work. Whatever it is, for me, it could have been easy to be like, what, I'm going to continue serving and staying where I'm at until these students are gone. One thing I've learned is no matter where you're at, there's always going to be a reason not to leave. There's always going to be a reason to stay. And you just got to take that leap of faith. You've got to balance, again, the optimism, like you said, have a balance of optimism, but also just embrace situations you're in. Obviously, it's very different compared to what James Stockdale was in, because he was literally a prisoner of war in the Vietnam War for 7 years. I can imagine what that's like. But at the same time, how can we use that same kind of thing, same kind of thinking in our own life? Even when we start getting things started up, we have to realize it's going to take time. I've used him before as a reference, but Gary Vaynerchuk, he talks so much about just giving it time. So many people start something and then within the first year aren't succeeding like they had planned. It's like, oh, well, this is a failure. No, you have to realize it's going to take time, and giving yourself time. And so I think the Stockdale paradox fits into here by, yes, having a dream and a vision and goals of, within a year, I want to have met this criteria and this criteria. That's good. That's great. But at the same time, those need to be goals that are reachable, obtainable, and they're going to seem maybe crazy at times, but at the same time, it really shouldn't be within that first year, a year in, I'm going to have this super successful, everyone's going to know it. Like, that could happen. That's great. But at the same time, what happens if that year comes and you're not like that, right? And all of a sudden you're beating yourself up because, it's not there. It's not as successful as you thought. And now you're having to fight against it. And so really that's what I wanted to bring up for us this week is it says, even acknowledge your situation and balance optimism with realism. You've just got to balance it, have an optimism and be optimistic about what you can do and where you can take it and where you can go with things. But at the same time, be real about it. Look at the market you're going into. Look at the just culture and market around you and say, hey, it may take a while, but I'm ready for it. And one thing I've learned too is if it's meant to be, it's going to happen. All in due time. There's a time for everything. Sit on that, be about that, and just be ready for whatever comes your way. Because your time's going to come. Each and every one of you, your time is going to come out there or from this, and you just got to be ready for when it does. And you've got to be willing to take action. And again, balance optimism with realism. This whole, again, just like James Stockdale said for him, like they were going and getting caught. He had to remind himself to not get in this mindset of, oh, I'll be out by Christmas. Oh, I'll be out by this time. Because if it came and it was gone and he was still as a prisoner of war, he was getting stuck. He wasn't going to make it. And that's going to make things real tough, real tough. And so I want to encourage each and every one of you, take that step, take that next step in starting what you want to do. Take that next step, find what you want to do, take that step, own it, and just balance. Balance is key. Balance is key. Be optimistic and be real about it, and watch how far things will go. It's going to be worth it. It's going to be amazing. And I know many things can come from it. And so, again, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. You just got to be patient and willing to put in the work. And so that's what we've got. Think of the Stockdale paradox. If you go to live out your calling, go to live out life, really. Whatever you're doing, be ready to balance optimism and realism and go for it. So that's all we've got. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode of the Monday Motivation Podcast with Keegan Jewell. We're coming together one Monday at a time to reach our full potential. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to reach out if you have any questions or anything, any questions, comments, and again, turn on those notifications. And can't wait for next week's episode of the Monday Motivation Podcast with Keegan Jewell.